Hello, my name is Andre Ward and I'm the Associate Vice President of the David Rothenberg Center for the Public Policy at the Fortune Society. And welcome to Both Sides of the Bars, a discussion-driven show that examines the legal system from various perspectives, including people most impacted by the criminal legal system. We discuss critical questions about how the current system works, its intersections with social justice, and highlight the efforts that are being made to improve the lives of everyone that is affected by it. We ask you, the viewers, to spread the word about both sides of the bars and share your comments with us on Twitter at the Fortune Society. Today's show is titled Functional News for Transparency and Uplifting Spirits. Trust and reliability in news can be broken down into specific factors that publishers can put into action and consumers can recognize. 85% of adults say accuracy is a critical reason they trust a news source. 76% of adults say having the latest details is a critical reason they trust news sources. And 72% of adults value news reporting that's concise and gets to the point. So I'll stop there. Which brings me to the purpose of highlighting the important work of experiencing today's guest, who is Lawrence Bartley. Lawrence Bartley is the Director of News Inside for the Marshall Project. He holds an advanced degree in professional studies from New York Theological Seminary and a Bachelor's of Science from Mercy College. He serves as a Board of Directors member for Prison Legal Services and Rehabilitation Through the Arts. He also serves on the advisory board for the Parole Preparation Project and Panacea Video. Previously, Lawrence co-founded Forgotten Voices and its successor, Voices from Within, which highlights remorse, redemption, and alters perception through video presentations. Lawrence is an accomplished public speaker and has provided multimedia content for NBC Nightly News, MSNBC, the New York Emmy-winning three-part series Drama in the Big House, NPR's All Things Considered, WNYC's Death, Sex, and Money podcast, and his Power of Parents voice, TED Talk. We're really excited to have Lawrence here today, and the Marshall Project is where Lawrence worked. Lawrence is an investigative journalist who brings news to people inside and about the issues impacting people inside, from the perspective of someone who has been inside themselves. This critically important work has a certain undeniable authenticity and necessity. Thank you for joining us today, Lawrence. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And so I know we're going to get right to it, and we really appreciate you joining both sides of the bars today. And kind of wanted us to, talk to our listening audience about the work that you do at the Marshall Project. What is the Marshall Project and the work you do there?
Well, the Marshall Project is a national news organization that reports on criminal justice news. It was founded 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. In fact, our 5-year anniversary will be next Thursday. Okay. And our first year we were founded, we won a Pulitzer Prize, and we came in second on 2 or 3 different occasions. Mm-hmm. Right now, the Marshall Project, we publish text stories, we publish video stories as well. But the Marshall Project is what I like to call public facing. Mm-hmm. We put out work for the public to consume, and we report on the criminal justice news in a way that's objective, so we don't take any sides. Sure. However, when you look at the criminal punishment system, mm-hmm. you will see that there's some ills. There's some things that many people think are abhorrent. And when you do that, you kind of charge people or call people to action. Sure. So what I do is News Inside, which is, it faces people who are incarcerated. Mm-hmm. I always like to say that the walls is not only meant to keep people in, right, but it's meant to keep information out. But I try to provide relative information that people can cling to because it's about them. It's about programs in other states that individuals wish that they could have in their state. Mm-hmm. It's about new legal precedences that's going on around the country that someone can pitch to his attorney in order to make it happen for him or herself. It's about good feeling stories. In the latest issue, we published a story by Kerry Blakinger when, mm-hmm. I believe the title is, When I Got Out of Prison, mm-hmm. My Dog Remembered Me. Mm-hmm. Stories like that, feel-good stories that give people hope and inspiration so they could come out, feeling not down and trodden or attacked by the society, but people who are invested in themselves through their incarceration and come out to be productive members of society.
So you're at the Marshall Project. What's your specific role there? You know, you've been there for how long now? Have you been there?
I've been there for a bit over a year.
It seems like you've been there for a long time, very, very long time. So you're at the Marshall Project. Your role is what? What's your title?
I'm the Director of News Inside.
So you're Director of News Inside. And talk to our listening audience about like News Inside. Does it go to facilities in different states, or is it just in New York State?
Currently, News Inside is in 38 states, the District of Columbia, and in parts of Canada. It's also in 356 facilities, whether it's prison or jail. And
I'm sure you've gotten a lot of response from folk who are there,
Definitely.
Tremendous amount, so much you probably can't even keep up with.
Oh, definitely.
But obviously it's really exciting to have it and important because now people get to understand what's happening in the world while they're inside.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I get letters all the time, and you're being so consumed with your work and being out here for, you know, I was formerly incarcerated myself. You know, I've been out for 18 months, and I stepped right into the workforce, and I have a family, so being consumed with that. But I try not to forget those individuals I left behind. Sure. And I certainly try not to forget individuals who are incarcerated, whom I never met. And my way of not forgetting is by producing News Inside. And I get reminded of everything people go through when they write me those letters telling me it. And it gets me charged up. And especially when they tell me that I'm doing a good job, or I would like to see this in the next issue. And if I'm able to do it, I feel like I'm meeting the people's needs, and I feel really, really proud of that.
And I know, obviously, since Inside News, or News Inside as it's called, yes, is really allowing for people inside to have access to it. What about the family members of those who are incarcerated? Do they too have access to it as well? Absolutely.
Family members reach out to me all the time and asking me for copies of News Inside. Every time an issue is published, I publish a little note online launching the particular issue, and family members could look online, and there's always a PDF to each issue, and they could download it and read it. But altogether, the Marshall Project content is online for public consumption, free of charge, all the time. So family members can always access the Marshall Project website and read our stories.
And we want to talk about, I mean, obviously you can give our listening audience and our viewers that information about the Marshall Project and how to access News Inside before we close. But it's really exciting, right? You have News Inside, you're at the Marshall Project, you're an amazing leader that's doing this work. Really excited about that. And you know, I know that there are a lot of things happening in New York City now.
Absolutely.
And by extension, New York State, particularly around one of the more hot button issues now, which is the closure of Rikers.
Right.
Talk to me about that. Like, what are your thoughts on the closure of Rikers? I mean, there was a lot of traction with it, but there were also a lot of detractors as well. So talk to our viewers about your thoughts on that.
Well, it's an interesting phenomenon. Here is it, you know, Rikers Island, this jail that stood for a long time, and it's like it's been in New York for so long. And I remember growing up, people would talk about Rikers, and then you would see these you would see these individuals who lead these unions, correctional unions, talk about how unsafe it is on Rikers Island, and then I would see videos of guards abusing incarcerated people, and I would hear all these crazy stories, and finally it all culminates in them closing Rikers Island, and they have to get it down, the population down from 9,000 to 5,000 to do it. And they're building these borough-based jails around the city in order to split the remaining 5,000 people up to house them in, but people don't want them there. And then there's people who, proponents of closing Rikers, want to go to the borough-based system because they're lessening the population. They're taking a step. But there are those who are prison abolitionists who believe that this shouldn't happen at all. There shouldn't be any jails. And you know, they're all working towards decreasing the population, but one believes the other one ain't going far enough and they're fighting. So I'm watching it from afar, and it's interesting, but my concern is for the people who are housed there. You know, the politics aside, you know, some people may be incarcerated for things that they shouldn't be. You know, if a person is not convicted of a crime, a person should be able to go to court and prove his or her innocence. Sure. You know, and a person doesn't have to be languishing in the jail to do that. But at the same time, you know, I always just worry about how, or like to focus on how the individual feeds his or her self, feed his or her soul, outside of the politics. You know, it's about, I'm fighting for this case, I have a family, I have a child, and, you know, what are you doing to better yourself? So when I think of the closed Rikers, I try to block out the nonsense, try to get to the heart, because I'm for the people who are going through the process.
Sure. And, you know, obviously those who are on the side of the aisle of creating the borough-based jails argue and maintain that, you know, they want better conditions for people who are going there, right? Where they have air conditioning, exposure to light, exposure and access to different programming. While on the other side of the aisle, the abolitionists say we should do away with it altogether. Right. But then the question lies, then what do we do with them, right? And so it's a quagmire, right, to some degree, and something that we need to figure out. But it's interesting that these things are happening. Right. There's been years of advocacy through different policy groups and organizations. Fortune obviously is one of them, who's supporting this. But then there's another thing that's come up too, and we haven't talked about this, but around the bail reform, right, which is another issue. And for our viewers, our next segment that we'll have in December, we're having a year in review. Right. And a year in review will look at all of what's happened throughout the year. But talk to our viewers a little bit about your thoughts on the Bail Reform Act. Obviously, it's going to be implemented and rolled out in January 2020.
I have a friend, Alec, who is like the authority on bail reform, and it struck me when he said, you know, I go around the country working on bail reform all the time, but a state that is doing it the best is New York State. I was like, wow, really? Yeah. So obviously New York State is taking a hell of a step to get it right. And this January, you know, bail reform will take place. The law will be enacted, and I'm hearing told that upwards of 900 people will be released by Christmas. Sure. You know, these individuals not seen to be a flight risk, and there's people pushing back. There's people getting scared, but people should realize that bail and the bail is not to. Or keeping people incarcerated, or not to, before they go to trial, is not to punish them. That's not the intent. Sure. You know, and bail is just a person's supposed to have the right to make bail. You know, it's just a person shouldn't have to pay to be out. Sure. And that is someone who has the same crime but can't afford it but would stay in. That's not a public safety issue. You know, it's about money, and it should never be about money. Sure. You know, so that's my take on the bail situation.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, they reports say that 75% of the people who fall into this category have either drug-related offenses or theft offenses around property, right? And so I know that you have these different media outlets, newspapers, who lift up the idea of like you're gonna have all these murderers and criminals like coming out to kill up the whole community. Right. And they often fail to mention the fact that, again, these folk who fall in this category have low-level offenses for the most part. Right. The other part of it is that, you know, when they talk about people being released under bail reform, they speak about it devoid of what supports will be in place to engage that population. Right. So there will be social workers and case managers who will be assigned to working with those people to ensure that they're also coming back and forth to court. Right. So it's interesting, right, that that's some other data and information that's out there. Yeah. And, you know, I know that you've been involved in a lot of things. 18 months, I thought you were home 18 years doing all the work that you're doing. But fairly recently, I think last month, I think around toward the end of October, you and many other formerly incarcerated leaders attended a town hall meeting in Philadelphia at Easton Correctional Facility. And it was there where you and others who participated in this meeting to interview some of the presidential candidates around criminal justice reform. Talk to our viewers about that experience.
Well, it was phenomenal. You know, it was a historic setting. By the way, the Eastern State Correctional Facility looks horrible. It looks horrible. I heard it doubles that as a haunted castle at night. Yeah, sure, and it looks haunted. It looks crazy. But
and I understand that the Marshall Project was the one that kind of like filmed it and did all the media stuff and put
we
that
did a
out there and
big media
supported with
push.
organizing it.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
And we partnered with a planning committee of returning citizens that made it happen. They were very organized. You know, Daryl Ackerson, Deanna Hodgson, Norris Henderson, Vivian Nixon. You know, these people were. You know, Deanna Hoskins, these people were great in what they did, and I really look up to them. They're really, really good leaders. And and the questions that we asked the candidates were questions that, you know, they haven't been asked before. They usually, like you mentioned with the closed Rikers, with the nonviolent, you know, we ask questions that pertain to violent felony offenders.
Absolutely. Because
just because a person creates one violent act doesn't mean that's a violent person forever. You know, people make mistakes, people or make bad decisions. Not even mistakes, they make bad decisions. But still, those people are redeemable. They're not irredeemable. There's things that led up to that. You have prisons in Germany and Norway that deal with what led them to commit the crime, not punish them for committing the crime. So I asked a question of Tom Steyer.
I remember you asked the question. I saw you.
Right. About, you know, because he worked on fighting against mandatory minimums, but what about putting a cap on maximum sentences? What about that? You know, they talk about, you know, cut 50 and cutting the prison populations by so much, but this can't be done without addressing violent felony offenders. You know, there are people who are incarcerated that are fed nothing but angst. When they're fed nothing but angst and they come out, that's why you see the recidivism rate is so high. But when you change the condition and you make people feel valued and part of the community, not just having housing issues when they get home, coming out with if you're lucky enough to get a master's degree, you get lowballed with a $38,000 a year job, and you think you made it, but you still have to put food on the table. And you know, all these different obstacles that people have when they're getting loans and et cetera, and that's what will lead people to commit crimes. Then you got these technical violations for parole offenses, for traveling out of the state for work, and then you go back to prison, and that adds to the recidivism rate, and it's just a whole quagmire of things that lead people to come back that the public really don't understand. So these are the type of issues that the individuals who ran the town hall were asking of the presidential candidates, and those are real criminal justice issues. And it was just exciting to see you and so many others, Norris, Deanna, Vivian, and Atkinson. I always forget his last name, but Daryl. And so doing that kind of phenomenal work. So what are some of the things that you're doing now? What are some of the upcoming things that you're looking to do? The Marshall Project, like in your personal life. And we'll certainly have you back on both sides of the bars. But talk to our viewers about some of the things that you're looking to do now and what the Marshall Project is doing. Well, the Marshall Project is working with Slate in order to survey the incarcerated population.
And what is Slate?
Slate is a magazine, Slate magazine.
Got it, okay.
In order to get the take from the incarcerated population throughout the country on criminal justice issues. We just published a primer about all the criminal justice issues that the candidates, Democratic candidates, have stood on in the past year. So people who are incarcerated, they will see it in issue 3 of News Inside. They will see how these Democratic candidates really think about issues that either hold dear to them, which are mainly individuals who are locked up in the Bureau of Prisons, the BOP, which is only 180,000 people when you look at the nearly 2.3 million people incarcerated. But at the same time, we have a accompanying article about that cater to people who are incarcerated in the states, and that deals with issues that people really care about, like life without parole, or like I mentioned before, caps on maximum sentences, you know, merit time, you know, things that people really think about, things that incarcerated individuals can strive to work to, because they're not incentivized. They told that, you know, that you're worthless, and when you come out, there's no chance for you. I mean, what are you doing? I remember seeing a YouTube video of presidential candidate who's leading the race right now?
Kamala?
No, he's leading a Democratic candidate. Blanking on his
Sanders?
name. No, Obama's vice
Biden.
president.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
I saw his talk about the super predators. When he mentioned the super predators, and he mentioned that,
which is language that comes from 1987, right? Around
yeah,
the Giuliani era and others, right?
Exactly.
The stuff that fed the Central Park Fives being
all that
falsely
stuff.
arrested,
exactly,
and convicted.
And he took credit. He basically took credit for. He said America takes credit for creating the super predator, for all these obstacles that I mentioned to you before, and it's their job to put these people away, like these people are redeemed. It was like saying that you created it, but put these people away. And you know, when we working on like putting together true factual pieces that people can read and dissect it and discern was fact from fiction, and so people could do with it what they want. We're not asking people to take a position or another, but we just giving them truthful information that they can use.
And you know, interesting, circling back to the town hall meeting at Eastern Correctional Facility, of all the presidential candidates, only 3 of them showed up for this meeting, right? I think Kamala Harris, Tom Steyer, and Cory Booker.
Cory Booker, yes.
Which is really interesting, right? Because you have maybe some Democratic candidates who are also seeking to get this higher seat in government, yet they weren't involved in that meeting. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when I think of it, I think of having conversations with people in the community and people when they were incarcerated. They would say, I'm not going to vote. What am I going to vote for? They're just going to do what they want anyway, or if I do vote, they're going to fix the elections and my vote is not going to count. And I don't know if that's fact or fiction there, but I just know if people don't vote, or if our voice is not even being counted, then you have candidates who don't want to listen to us anymore. Just recently, nearly 37,000 people in Louisiana got their right back to vote. So some of those, we did a story about some of those individuals saying, I'm not going to vote. For what? You know, but then some of them be like, I've been waiting to vote all my life. This is my civil duty. It's my right. It's part of me being free, and I want to vote. So when people like that who have criminal convictions get up and stand up and say they want to vote, then you have presidential town hall meetings where it's going to be packed. All the candidates are going to be banging on the door to be there. Sure.
Lawrence, it's such a pleasure for you joining us today. How can our viewers get in contact with the Marshall Project, find out more about News Inside? What do they need to do in order to get access?
You need to go on our site at www.themarshallproject.org, and there you will get so much relevant, real news about the criminal justice system. You will be sure to be educated. All our writers, I like to brag about them a lot. They're award-winning writers. You know, we have some superstars in there. It's like a job of my dreams because I'm working with like some of the Avengers. You know, they're in there, they go in the weeds, they travel all across the country, they're from across the country. We have reporters in Oklahoma, DC, California, Louisiana, New York, and they're doing some good work, man. And I think if you all go on the website, you'll really appreciate the stuff that you see there.
Good. Thank you so much, Lawrence. I'm sure we'll see you back here on both sides of the bars at some point.
Call me, I'm here.
Really appreciate that. And we're just really excited. You know, both sides of the bars is really here to allow our viewing audience to understand the perspective of others as it relates to criminal justice reform, and how we can best advance and amplify the issues that are meaningful to the population that we serve. I know you and I were incarcerated together when we were adolescents, when we were teenagers, and now here we are. Here we are, right, together, representing this really powerful work, and just so many leaders that are out there in the world, so many formerly incarcerated leaders, and we're just really excited. I think that at some point we'll make sure that, you know, even if you have some of your colleagues from the Marshall Project would like to join you next time we have you on the show, we welcome that as well. Any closing thoughts for our viewers?
I would just say, you know, I appreciate the time and I appreciate what you're doing and the Fortune Society is doing, you know, because I see many of my friends like Brent, like Ralph, and like Kev. I see all of them at the Fortune Society lately posted on Instagram, and I see hope in their eyes. And you know, I'm a proponent of hope. And if the Fortune Society is giving my fellas that hope, man, then I'm for the Fortune Society. So I appreciate it and thank you.
Absolutely, we appreciate that too. In closing, you know, well, this has been, you know, a thought-provoking discussion, and we want to thank, you know, you for joining us, Lawrence, and thank you to the viewers for tuning in. If you're interested in finding out more about the Fortune Society, please check us out on the web at fortunesociety.org or on Facebook by typing in the Fortune Society. This is Andre Ward, and I appreciate you joining us as we critically look at both sides of the bars.